Thank you.
There you go.
That's so odd because I wasn't on mute in the group. So anyway, all these little technical details. I'm so sorry for the problems getting into groups, everyone. And you may not have seen what flower you were. So we're just going to do some open reporting back. I was just saying on mute that at the beginning of this pandemic, I used the analogy that we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. And that really came up in my group. We have, you know, the hospital where there are no volunteers in roles, but they are really planning to build back better and their volunteers want to come back. And yet we have somebody in municipal recreation where out of 400 roles, they were able to shift 350 to outdoors and low risk. So everybody is at certainly different stages. Just a couple of things we talked about is that we need to ensure that organizations retain their volunteer managers moving forward. And somebody said that their boss really went to bat for them to make sure that their job was retained so that they could help their organization move forward. So I don't think we really had one big idea for opportunities for advocating together to strengthen volunteer engagement in the sector. And I wonder if other people could share any big ideas or ideas from their group that would be helpful for us all to hear. Yes, Dean, you can unmute yourself, I believe. Yeah, yes.
Hi, so the folks in the Forsythia flower group talked about the opportunity that will present itself from the segment of the volunteer community, either more disconnected or more reluctant to be as engaged as they had in the past. And the opportunity here in terms of providing them with the means and the methods to stay connected. And of course, a spin-off of that will be the opportunity set that comes from enabling the able and the unaffected to help keep the affected and the reluctant engaged. So it's all about this one segment of the population that's not going to be as anxious to be engaged as they had in the past, but we can do so leveraging that opportunity that comes from technology and the people with the skill sets to do that. The other idea that came about was the need for cooperation, collaboration, communication, and even acknowledging that competition, while it is a bad word in some senses, it is a good word in another sense, in that no matter what, we're all competing for the same funds in our own ecosystems and our spheres of activity. That speaks to the need for alliances. I bet without exception, almost every group here represented has alliances they may not be aware of. But when you look at the definition of alliance, that little contract that you've got with somebody in your value chain that you've basically taken for granted is itself an alliance. There's going to be all kinds of opportunities like that. So that's where that idea of competition and cooperation comes from.
Great, thank you. That's a great big idea. Now, maybe I was the only one that didn't realize my flower group. You knew you were for Cynthia. Do we have somebody from the crocuses who knew they were in crocuses who wanted to report back? If you
we were crocuses, and I think Carrie was taking notes. So sorry, Carrie, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Thanks, Dean.
Sorry, I can unmute myself, but I can't get my video working right now. So unfortunately, you get to see the black screen. I was taking notes, and we had quite a few different conversations in our group. It was a lot of conversation about networking with others, and also about getting involved with other with our professional associations and actively participating in the conversations that are happening. So things like, whether it's volunteering on boards or with committees or creating working groups to develop resources in collaboration with our professional groups. Those were some of the things that we had talked about within the corpuses that we could be working on to be able to share resources with others in our network.
That's great. And it speaks to maybe opportunities for specifically working together with the potential partners we heard today. So if decent work, Kathy, is something that really sparked people, maybe, that's something that where we can share resources or people or create those more lasting links and moving forward together rather than just stopping where we start the conversation today. Thank you. How about daffodils? Somebody from Daffodil like to mute themselves and share one big idea or a couple of smaller ideas?
Yeah, it's Allison here. We had a group of 6, and I would say that amongst those 6, it was obvious to me anyway, it was one of the points that I made. We didn't come up with one big idea, is that, organizations are at a different place, even within, some of them are small, not a very big capacity. Some have like departments. And so the first step for some organizations is simply trying to advocate within their organization with their leadership for recognition of the value of volunteering and the program, and try to get the board on board, whether you're using this code or whatever tool. But that might not be for another organization, that might not be necessary, because maybe it's all sort of ingrained in the DNA of the organization. So for those organizations working with other nonprofits or with their volunteer center or others in the community to try and get together on that, encourage the other nonprofits to get there, or together advocate for some recognition within the community or beyond. One big idea on the professional side was to create a common certification across the country. So that could be a big deal, or that could be something that that would really actually probably bring together the professional associations that do and don't have certification, but for a conversation and to see how that might work out. And I think there was one more idea. Oh, I've forgotten what it was. I did not take notes. Sorry, does a fellow daffodil want to come up with?
That's okay. That's okay. We are in a time crunch, so
Right.
That's great. Just for those who don't know, there is international certification, there is provincial certification. Thrilled to see how many people on my LinkedIn profile from across North America and beyond were boasting that they just were certified in the last round. So for anybody who wants to look into that, we are fortunate to have some professional certifications in place that you can follow up on. Hyacinths. I'm going to go through again because we are in a bit of a time crunch, and as people have mentioned, these some of the topics we're able to touch on today would be great topics for follow-up, for webinars, and for committees to look at. So I'm just going to go through, and if you're in a group that has something to share with us, please unmute yourself and let us know. Primroses.
Hi, Reva. It's Charmaine.
Hi, Charmaine, up in Thunder Bay.
Yeah. I was just going to report back for our group. I was actually in 2 meeting rooms, so I kind of stuck with another one and exited. I don't even know the name of our flowers, but a couple of things we talked about, certainly, which is not uncommon thread with everyone, is advocacy within our profession through our association. So our AVAs, PAVRO, VMPC, Volunteer Canada, and one of them mentioned, one of the members on our group said that they certainly share all the advocacy work that, for example, Volunteer Canada was doing around our profession with their volunteer advisory boards, sharing the stories of the good things that are happening during COVID, volunteers, delivering food to families, and those impact stories, and making sure that people hear them. The other thing we heard about advocacy is in regards to immunization, and why are volunteers who are also representing essential service organizations not being immunized at the same time, whereas other places like Peel Hospital, a hotspot, not only were they immunized, their story is really incredible. And I know, Reva, you've talked about it and advocated and given them the thumbs up for the work they did. The other thing that came up that I thought was quite good too was sort of surveying and finding out what organizations are really being held together by volunteers right now, those essential services that have maybe no paid staff. And are you know, getting some statistical data out there to show that these people have kept those organizations alive, and using that. And certainly one other thing we heard is the most engaged group are students, and if you want information to get out fast, using them to advocate, because they certainly have access to all the forms of social media and can do that rather quickly. And to the group that I was with, was there anything else that I perhaps missed that I didn't document? Please jump in.
Okay. And because again, with over 100 people, things are taking a little longer than we anticipated. So I'd like to just open it up the last couple of minutes we have for this reporting back to anybody from any group who would like to share a big idea of how we might be able to move forward together based on what we've heard. And if
Sure.
not, lots, okay, who said sure?
It's Kim, sorry.
Hi, Kim. Nice to
see
have
Kim.
you here. Hi, Kim.
And representing the Trillium Group. So some of what we talked about has already been covered, so I won't cover that again, but AVAs and associations. We talked a lot about sort of managing up, and if we're not invited to the table, but to take a place at the table, whichever table that might be within our organization. It's just sort of being there and being mouthy, but also looking for opportunities to have influence, whether it's across departments or with your manager, and sort of taking those opportunities and demonstrating and continuously sort of sharing the value of volunteers within the organization, whether that's the financial value or the value added. The other thing we talked about is supporting other staff members or other departments or other folks who work with volunteers who don't necessarily have the skills, but to kind of take a place to kind of supplement them and help them to build their skills in volunteer engagement.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to ask anybody else who has something to contribute to us from their group to please just jot it down in the chat, because I would like to take the last few minutes that we have to invite our panelists again to respond, to add anything else that they would like to share with us, because it certainly seems like the power of networking and alliances and working together at this pivotal time to support the work of each other, to come up with strategies and messages that resonate for all of us may be a great way forward. So I would like to, for the panel members who were able to stay with us for the whole afternoon, I would like to give them an opportunity. Kathy, I see you're there. I wonder if you want to unmute yourself and tell us anything else about ONN that you didn't have a chance to do, or your response to what you've heard here today.
Mm-hmm. It's been really fascinating and really interesting. So I really appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts. What really struck me today was there's huge opportunities for change in this moment and going forward. And also, I think there's a lot of lessons we learned from the last year. I know our breakout session was talking about the rise of grassroots and mutual aid networks and how we engage them in our sector in a positive way. We also talked about the definition of essential. What is an essential worker? What is an essential volunteer? Who is doing essential services in the nonprofit and charitable sector right now? And so I think those are really important things to take stock on and figure out before we forget, what are our recommendations going forward? And what do we need to change as we progress? And I will just make one shout out. We are doing a province-wide sector survey of nonprofits and charities in the next 2 weeks to find out what has happened over the last year. What are the, what programs have you, if folks have had to cut staff, how your volunteers program doing, what federal and provincial programs benefited your organization, for example, how many have actually closed their doors. And so if you see that survey, and you can subscribe to our newsletter, which is free at theonn.ca, but please fill it out or share it with your executive director or someone in your team, because we'd really like to get a great snapshot of how the sector is doing, including what's keeping folks up at night and what are some of the opportunities to move forward. So thanks so much, Reva, for facilitating this conversation today.
That's wonderful, Kathy. And I think that PAVRO can play a role of sharing these kinds of opportunities for collecting data and information with our members. Thank you. Bernadette, with Imagine Canada, were you able to stay with us? I'm going to go ahead and call on Michelle from VMPC. Any final thoughts, anything you would like to share that we didn't have an opportunity to discuss before? Any ideas about moving forward? Michelle?
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I'm really hoping that this can continue moving forward. I think one of the key things is when we have these conversations, we do need to action them in some way. And it doesn't mean that we actually have to create change right this second, but it means that we need to continue on the conversation. And it means that you know, everyone that's taken the time to be here needs to kind of sit back and ponder and where their role is within advocacy and where they're comfortable with it, where their actual capacity, both mentally and time-wise, sits within that, and then move forward. I think we're all network weavers. We're all you know, we work in a nonprofit sector for a reason most of the time, right? It's not for the money. It's for what we contribute and the impact we can make. And I think we need to recognize that in ourselves. I think we need to recognize that in our profession, and then the impact that we can make, the conversations that we can have, and the actions that can come from that are pretty empowering when you start to recognize those things. So I really do think we need to be sharing our stories. I think we need to be sharing our ideas. If you have an idea to how to support the profession, share it within your own community circle, share it with PAVRO, share it with VMPC, share it. and you're not alone in creating things, or you can be if you want to be, but we're also social network weavers, and we need to be reminded of that, and connect and just continue the conversation. I know VMPC, we have a connection call on June 9th. That's centered around advocacy. We're going to be doing the start of an activity that's going to be, we're still trying to decide if it's a week long or a month long, of advocacy tasks and stuff with prizes at the end. So, you know, participate in things like that, and build your networks.
Wonderful. Yes, I think one of the things that today has reinforced for me is the importance of these networks and the opportunities that they represent. So encourage everybody to connect with the organizations here and do whatever we each can to support, to join committees, to share information, to move forward together. So thank you for that. And Corrine.
Yeah, absolutely. So
OBCN.
This has been a real eye opener, and thank you so much for having me. I think that the most important lesson I've learned is that collaboration is absolutely going to be key moving forward between the provincial organizations, and at a national level as well, but at a local level as equally as much. And I think it's in order for everybody, all the leaders of volunteers, clearly that we've heard today, they're all very, very willing to engage in advocacy. But I think as these associations and groups, and as certainly from the OVCN perspective and from a local volunteer center perspective, we need to work on giving them some resources and tools to be able to make that happen. I think that needs to be a big priority.
Great, thank you so much. What a good way to kind of wrap up this section before the final goodbyes. I think it has been so useful, and I thank the panelists so much to help us look forward in terms of how we can ensure the most impact, sustainability, and growth coming out of this time. Thank the members who took the time, who are in all different situations, working hard, laid off, seconded, unsure about the future. Thank you all so much for contributing today. And it's been a pleasure as a volunteer, as a PAVRO volunteer today, to be involved and to be with you all. So with that, I will turn it back over to the MC for the final goodbye.
would be good to unmute. There we go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And we hope to see you again this Thursday for the important health and safety program session, which will help us all be prepared to welcome back and re-engage our volunteers in our programs gradually as we emerge from this pandemic. I'd also like to remind everybody about the AGM that is in June, and you'll get more information about that at a later time. And to please consider enrolling in our mentor program as a mentor or a mentee, which is an invaluable opportunity for both experienced and new members in the profession. I'd like to very, very much thank my co-host today, who is in a blue hat, and I put on a red hat. And this was done on purpose to thank everybody for being super in breaking forward from pandemic to possibilities. And thank you to the conference committee for all your support and organizing this wonderful day one for everybody. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you on May 6th this week.
Bye, Reva.
Thank
Good
you
job,
all,
everybody. Nice
Ooh,
to see you.
right on time, Gay. Very,
yes.
very good, guys. Right on time.
Awesome job.
Thank you. Hope to see you on Thursday.
Thank you, Shannon.
Amanda, you're a natural.
Ah, there we go.
Yes, you're waiting for some music. Dancing. That's right.
Congratulations, committee.
Heather, you dance like me. Elaine from Science Belt.
The MCs were awesome. Thanks for
Oh,
I love
good job, you guys. Woo, round of applause.
It was very natural. Very natural with Helena. We just like clicked.
I figured you would. I figured you would.
Ah, now we've got that music, guys.
I know, Reba's been waiting for that music.